What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Risk Valor. Here we embrace the power of vulnerability. We celebrate the journeys that shape us. So join us as we dive deep into the stories of courage, resilience, and adventure in this case. So we inspire you to step outside your comfort zones, embrace the risks that lead to your personal fulfillment. And today I'm super excited to have my friend Bree on here. So welcome, Bree.
Thank you so much. I love what you're doing here, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
Me too. So, as a little background, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are serving in the Marine Corps. So, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yep. So I'm actually a reservist in the Marine Corps now. I just switched from active duty over to the
Yep.
reserves. I started out as a combat engineer, which was really exciting. It was when they were just starting to open up all the combat arms to
Yes.
women. So I was thrilled to be able to go into that. And then at like the 4 or 5 year mark, I transitioned and became an Africa Foreign Affairs officer. So then I got
Awesome.
to start working with a lot of the foreign militaries, going to all over Africa, building out like the security cooperation engagements and working on some of the exercises that we were doing there with the partners. And currently, I just switched, and so my reserve unit is now over in Hawaii, which is really nice at the
Yeah,
Marine headquarters for the Pacific Command.
that is so awesome because I know we've been following each other probably for a couple years, few years, a
Yeah,
long time. Yeah. So, I'm like, the fact that we get to, like, I guess you can call this like a FaceTime, so to speak.
yeah.
It's really cool because every time I've seen you, I'm like, she's always doing something. Like, I know she's serving because I see like the military stuff, and then you always take time to probably explore the places that you go to. So tell us about that because some of the stuff you've done, I'm just like, my mind is blown, honestly.
Yeah, so I think one of the best things about the military is obviously the opportunity to go different places and have unique experiences. I think that's one of the hooks
Yeah.
that they always kind of sell it, and it's really true. And I think there's a lot of ways to take advantage of it. My first duty station was in Okinawa, Japan. So
Wow.
from there, kind of where I started, you get so many like 72 and 96, the long weekends, and I would try and just go anywhere that I could. And there's cheap plane tickets there. And so I think especially when you're outside of the US, it's a lot cheaper and easier to travel.
Yeah.
But I would plan all of the long weekends to go somewhere. And that's really where I started like traveling a lot and starting to capture some of the pictures and sharing them on social media is kind of where I
Yeah.
started. I had no intention of really doing anything on social media, but as I went unique places like Burma and all over
That's
Southeast
so
Asia, I started capturing it. And then, yeah, I try and plan all of my leave days out very closely to make sure that I can maximize those 30 days that you get every year and try to
absolutely.
wherever I'm located. So most recently I was over in Germany and bounced all over Europe and tried to do everything on my bucket list while I was living in that area.
That's so cool. I've seen so many of the photos and I'm like, this is a really cool, unique experience. So I'm glad that you like took that jump for yourself. I mean, and do you do it all alone or do you usually have like some people out there?
It depends. So I always
Yeah.
like plan out, here's my list of places I'm going to be going for the next few months, and then I send it to my friends. And if anyone's around and interested in joining, so this afternoon I'm going to be flying to South Africa, and I have two friends that are coming on this trip. So that's really exciting. But if people aren't available, then yeah, I just solo travel because I don't want to like postpone and say, ah, someday I'd like to go here.
Yeah.
I'd rather just go by myself and do it. That way I'm not waiting around. But if others can join, I always love having people come on the trips too, because that's really fun too.
That's so cool. I need to hop on one, so let's figure
Yeah.
that out. What's been the most memorable place or impactful? Maybe both.
I really like the ones that are kind of further away and like off the grid. So I really liked Burma was a good one. Easter Island and the Galapagos, they're kind of close in
Mm,
location. I really enjoyed those, but I think it's because there's less tourists that are there. And
yeah.
it's usually people that are really interested in like doing activities rather than just kind of like hanging out and drinking, laying on a beach, which are all great. But
Yeah.
getting to like go scuba diving and go hiking in those places, I really enjoy that type of thing. And now I'm on the mountain climbing, so I have to save all of my days. I'm trying to do the 7 summits.
Oh,
So
wow.
I have to save up all my days to be able to go do these longer duration hikes.
Absolutely. I bet that's super fulfilling, I would say.
Yeah, at the end of it, you're like, all right, I actually went and did something, and you do feel good. And it's like training that's going towards something. So I enjoy it.
Yeah. So how did you get into foreign affairs?
So I grew up actually between Ohio and Hungary. My parents worked with different NGOs, and
Wow.
so we moved around and lived in some different places. And so I spoke Hungarian, I spoke
Okay.
French, and then I went to a unit, the Security Cooperation Group, which has now been shut down for the Marine Corps.
Oh,
They had this where you would go and support the different component commands and doing the exercises in different places. So I thought I was going to be Europe affairs officer, and then they were lacking some of the Africa ones. So with French, I ended up being aligned to the Africa portfolio, and actually really loved it because it took me to places that I never would have gone on my own, or it would have been really difficult to get into some of the countries that I got to go
yeah.
to.
Absolutely. That's an awesome story. It's very exciting to hear. It's like I want to live vicariously through you. But I bet there's that like a cultural piece too that you have to fall into, and I'm sure you get briefed on it and everything like that. But really being, would you say with that position you get really immersed in the culture?
Yeah, and I think especially on some of them, some of the countries you end up going back to a lot of times, and so you become a lot more familiar and you get to know people. But there's absolutely like the respect side of traveling and learning everything. So usually would work with the embassy, the country teams. Somalia was one of my favorite things that I got to do while I was
Yeah.
there. So they did the first female engagement team, and I had the chance to like lead that and take the team into Somalia. So yes,
Wow.
there's absolutely the aspect of kind of understanding the religious, the cultural, some of the different aspects, because that also shapes the way that you do engagements with them and you structure the training to be respectful of where they're coming from as well.
Yeah, definitely. And with all the training and like my prior military experience, I know that communication and that cross dynamic between different elements can be difficult. Have you run into any issues, or for the most part, is it like fairly seamless once you get to that level?
I think usually, of course, there's some differences, and
Yeah.
it's trying to be respectful as well. I think, especially as a female, you kind of get the question mark
Yeah.
when you come in initially. But generally, I'd say like all of our partners were really respectful. They understand that
Yeah.
women are allowed to hold different positions within the US military. And so I don't think there was really any like key friction points there, because
Yeah.
I think that is pretty well established and communicated.
That's awesome. That was my next kind of question that I always get curious about is women in the military, women in the combat arms, women in any of these kind of positions, because it can be, I mean, there's very differing opinions out there of like what women can and can't do. And I mean, we're kind of, proven that, I was in combat arms as well. So it's like and it opened up newly when I was in. So I was like, hell yeah, I want to go artillery, because why not if I can?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't think like it's good that you're not hearing like more of the backlash piece, because I'm at the. Do you think that there's like this what do you call this unwritten rule or dynamic where you know women have to prove themselves in
Oh,
certain positions?
yeah, and I do think you get more of the friction in my experience. So I came in the same time. It was the beginning of they were doing the testing to see, all right, can women go
Yeah,
into these different arms? And yes, I think it was more difficult. I think the leadership, once they were told to get on board, they kind of had to, if they didn't agree with it, they had to be silent about that opinion, and at least on the
yeah,
outside, like do the motions that they were supportive of it. And I think the junior, like the most junior members, um, if they see you doing your job well, they're not really going to question if you're a man or a woman who's in the role. I think
hmm,
more of the challenge that I had was with peers that would just say like backhanded compliments of like, oh, you did
yeah,
that really well for a woman. And you're like, no, I did that really well. Or they question a like selection for a specific thing. And they're like, well, they had to have a token female. And you're like, all right, so that had nothing to do with like all of our performance and our fitness test and everything else, had nothing to do with all of the metrics to be able to be evaluated. So yeah, I definitely think there's that element that you're supposed to show up, and then women have to go kind of above and beyond to
Above and
prove
yep.
that they belong there.
Yes, I would say that's a similar, and it's sad is like it comes from the people that are our peers. And that's what I was interested in knowing, is that's the prevalent like repeat thing, is that it is the peers, is the people we directly work with, that we have to prove ourselves. And hopefully one day we don't have to as much, but if we do, it's like, and it depends what kind of woman you are too. If you're willing to go out there and just be like, I'm just going to perform, and they're going to see for themselves. That's kind of how I did it. I had some really good male mentors that were just like, you already know yourself, I know you, but you just need to show them that. And it sucks that you have to like do more than everyone else, but I mean, I had to go in there and like be faster than my guys. I had to like, go above and beyond, like you said. So I find that really interesting. And kind of going back, you said that you kind of grew up with, going to different places. So I don't know if it really plays into, have you had any fear of like an unknown place or vulnerable, or is this something you've been groomed since you were younger, that this is just, it was normal to you?
I think as it was, especially as a female, when you travel solo to different places,
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some locations that you go to and just you hear so many negative things in the media that you're like, all right, maybe this is really an unsafe place. But I went to like Turkey by myself and traveled around, and I think a lot of it is just a perception that places are unsafe, or the people are going to be unfriendly towards you, or there's going to be some issues. And I think usually it's very overplayed. I think a lot of times it's perfectly fine for you to go. And there's so many others that are also solo traveling in different places that I haven't really found that many challenges. I mean, there's harassment in some
Yeah.
places that you get, but that's a part of cultural differences as well, I think.
Yeah. And as long as you've gotten your briefing and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're like, okay, just ignore or like
Yeah.
make sure you're not alone in certain places. Yeah. That's so interesting to me. And so with some of the things I've seen like you post, would you say, and the fact that you're even embracing like adventure in the unknown and on your own, does mindfulness play a piece in your life, like that mental health piece? Like, I don't like how do you integrate that? Because I've seen some things where I'm like, it alludes to like your I don't know, like a mental health journey, like in a good way, like mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah, I definitely think, and for me, traveling is one of those like releases to get away from everything and to kind
Yep.
of give that space to recover. And there's times that I'll not post anything, kind of just like disconnect completely. And I think that's really important as well. I think especially for competitive people, and a lot who are in the military are very competitive,
Yeah.
having time to just kind of be internal, reflect, and be away on those solo trips is really helpful. And I think everyone on social media, especially, like post all of their highlight reels.
Hmm.
And when you're comparing that constantly, it can be a little challenging, I think, especially for mental health, that you're seeing all of these amazing things that other people are doing, and like, again, just
Yeah.
like all of the best. I think it's so interesting that people feel the need to apologize. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, I've been away from this for a couple of days. And it's like, that doesn't matter. Like, it's your life. You go do whatever you need to do and like take the time for yourself. So, yeah, I definitely think giving
Yeah.
space and recognizing that is really important. And I think that's definitely a challenge for the military side, because you lean so far away from vulnerability
Yeah.
and discussing anything that's going on of real value. But vulnerability doesn't equal weakness.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is really important to recognize and give space for in your life.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head too, with it being a thing these days with social media. Everything's being blasted. You only have to post your perfect pictures. You only have to post the perfect parts of your life, not the struggle and the hard time. And some people do. Some people are really great at, doing both, whether it's embellished or not. Some of us like feel, oh, maybe I don't have a story to tell. And that's what this platform is for, is like everyone has a story. And I would say you are probably living not probably, are living a life that most, from what you can see in the traveling piece, that people want, say that that's what they want in life. I just want to travel the world, but no one ever does it. You know what I mean? And yes, like you have a career that aids in it, but at the same time, you have to take the time to like plan around that. You have to actually want to do that and to put yourself out there. You could have just done your job and come back and then live a normal, yeah, a normal life, you know? So I would say you're living what most people would say is their dream.
Yeah, but I think so many people like have this, and
Yeah.
again, that goes back to like why I do the solo travel so many
Yep.
times is like I think don't wait to do things that you
Mm-hmm.
really want to do. Like start now. Try something out,
Yeah.
and you know, if you decide that's not your thing, then you have time and you can go explore other options. But if you always just kind of put it on a pedestal, I think I ran my first marathon that way. I was like, running's not really my jam, but like everyone seems to want to run a marathon, like I'll go do it. And I was like, you know what? Like not really my favorite thing. But I think
Yeah.
just going and like trying different things, what you said earlier, of like push yourself outside your comfort zone, try new things. If you
Yeah.
love it, then you can end up keep doing it. Skydiving was that way for me. It was like a bucket list thing. I wanted to go do it.
Yeah.
I loved it and then went and got my skydiving license. So like there's so many things that if you try it, then you can continue doing and decide like what you actually do love and then prioritize your time that way.
I love that. And that's so inspiring. And I think the women who are listening, there's also some guys that listen to, are going to be inspired by your story alone. I mean, it's the bucket list life. I have a few women who've been on here that live a bucket list life, whether it was a near death experience that pushed it or they've just had it in them like you. I mean, I think it's beneficial for everyone to hear that. It's like your life does not have to be limited. Most of us, it comes down to like, oh, well, I don't have money for it. I don't have this. I'm like, well, like, you know, there's all those budgeting things, like take off the Netflix and all these subscriptions. Like, how much do you really need? Have you actually budgeted like even a yearly trip or a yearly something, or try a dance class? Like that's something like it's on my list because I used to do a little bit, and I'm like, I see these TikTok videos, I'm like, I really want to learn how to do that. Like I'll just stand in front of my TV with my son and I'm like, let's learn how to do this. I'm
I
like,
love
this looks fun. Little bucket list. But yeah, because I've like, I wanted to travel with my son. I'm like, I want to, but he's so little that I don't think he'd appreciate it yet. So I want it to be at an age where like he can
remembers
appreciate
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to take you somewhere exotic and you're just like, where's the freaking like, you know, arcade here in like this foreign country? I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
But I think
That's
with the budget piece, there's so many different ways
yeah.
to travel. And there's, I've discovered while I've been traveling so much of like different places that will offer room and board. If you come
Yeah.
there and do like in Champagne region in France in Epernay, they
Yep.
have where you can come like help pick grapes during the harvest, which is a cool experience.
Yeah.
Your room and board is covered, and then you get to bring home some bottles of champagne like from these nice houses. But there's so many different opportunities like that. Again, it's just like taking the time to research and find it, but there's ways to like make money while you're traveling, and so you can at least balance out like how much things are costing. But
Yeah.
there's different, yeah, there's just a lot of ways. And I think also once you leave the US, traveling around like Southeast Asia is so cheap. When you look at how much you spend per day, I was in Bali last year and spent like a month there, and it was like $10 a night to stay in like a
Wow.
beautiful villa, and it was a private room, so it's not staying in hostels and stuff, which I used to do all the
Yeah.
time. Now I've kind of like grown out of that. But
Yeah.
again, there's just so many ways to travel really cheaply once you like leave and you go to a place. So
And you actually try it out. That's really cool to know. There's some ladies out there who do, or at least one woman that I know of who does exclusively women solo traveler, like what's it called, like packages, where she'll
oh,
actually lead you through and like, you know, and that's just if you're a first. I would say like if it was my first time solo traveling, I would probably do something like that where it's a little bit more guided, or at least here's the hot points, here's where you can stay, I'm a connection to you type thing. At least for a first time traveler, I guess I would try that or suggest it, just because you probably don't, if you've never done it before, it'd be very daunting.
yeah.
But there's people like that. There's a girl who graduated with me from high school, and she went through a really hard time and then just decided, you know what, like I'm gonna just live my life completely differently. I'm just going to pack all my stuff up into my car, sell everything else, and travel the US first. And now she's doing it overseas. Like she just stays in different places, does all these things. And it's so inspiring because I mean, as if you're trying to like heal yourself too, I bet it's a very good way to heal yourself is being immersed in other cultures, taking in the beauty of, the world, really.
Yeah. And you see, I think, people in all different circumstances, and the
Mhm.
ones who have the most wealth are not typically the happiest, I think.
Yeah.
Some people I met in Africa that just like their circumstances were very different from the average American, and yet like they were so much happier and seemed like genuinely more excited about life
Yeah.
of Americans who are just like stuck in this rat race. But I love that story. It's like you're always one decision away from having a completely different life.
Yes.
When you're in a dark space and you're going through something, I think like just remembering that, and then you're like, okay, what can I do to get back to a place where I was happy? Like, what were those circumstances? For me, it's usually travel, which is why I'm always like, all right, plan it out, like keep something on the calendar to look forward to. It's helpful.
Yeah, and I bet you're going to continue to do that even when you decide to fully leave the military. I bet it's like in you now where you're like, I'm just going to continue to travel and then maybe space one day. That's like you've checked every
That would be
country off.
awesome. Yeah.
I think that would freak me out a little bit, seeing Earth from a distance. I'd be like, I don't know.
I love
But
that one, the Red Bull, where he jumped out from space and did the land. Like that's super wild and kind of like
yeah,
up there in the list. Maybe someday we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. You're very adventurous. I'll give you that. That's wild to me. Yeah, and the fact that you've picked up all these new skills too, the scuba diving, like jumping out of airplanes, and like I was military airborne, so that was
Oh,
its
awesome.
own thing. But I would like to do actual skydiving because I mean, airborne is you're only so high off the ground. So you're not, I mean, it's not that actual free fall, except out of a helicopter. That gave you a little bit of it, but for the most part, it's like a vacuum almost when you jump out the plane. But I'm like, the free falling, the skydiving is something that's on my list that I'm like, I really, really want to do that. So it's cool to see like other people that have just gone out there like, let's do it. Cause I mean, this helps me just as much as it helps listeners. Cause I'm like, it's so inspiring. And I had these women, like women have amazing stories. We're amazing creatures. And we have a platform and many platforms that we can speak on about our stories because everyone's voice matters. And who knows like what story is going to inspire someone to change just one part of their life. Like you said, one decision away from a completely different life. And that's so true, whether it's like fitness, or it's just your career, it's your life, your family, anything, your passions. Because a lot of us, I want to say you did touch on when was the last time you were happy? A lot of mindset coaches and life coaches ask that question. Like, when was the last time you remember being really happy? Or remember a time in childhood, even? Like, what were you doing? Who were you surrounded by? What was your environment? Like, just to create that in your mind, because as adults, like, you start to lose touch a little bit with those things.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you brought it up because I'm like, that's something I've even asked myself, or I've had coaches come on here and be like, that's one of the questions we ask because it's so simple. Like, when were you last happy? And if you have to think really hard about it, you need that one decision to change your life.
For sure. Yeah, I keep a little list of like, here's my
Yeah.
top 5 favorite memories. It's in the back of my little notebook that I have because I always have a notebook with me to like keep capture notes and things as I'm going around, and it's my
Yeah.
calendar. But I keep that in there just when I'm having a really bad day or like a really tough week, just to pull it out and be like, all right, these were the moments that I was truly happy. Like, what am I doing to get back to another happy, good place to be in? Because yeah, it's very easy to be overwhelmed, and you're told a list of 100 things you're supposed to be doing every
Yeah.
single day in order to be living like the right way, and it can be really challenging. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I know the other piece to like your story that people want to hear, of course, is the struggle piece, the hard, the hard pieces, the pieces that maybe, would you say there was a struggle that shaped you in the way you are today? Or, I mean, no one lives a perfect, like seamless life without struggle. So tell us about
very
some
true.
struggle that helped you to the place that you're at now. Cause I mean, the things that you're saying and doing, I'm just like, wow, you really got your stuff is straight. It's like you know how to like set yourself, but there had to be a moment where that transition for you.
Yeah, so I think there's two main ones.
Yeah.
First, I moved out really young, so my family, we didn't have enough money to like put towards college or do anything, and my nobody in my family had ever gone. But I knew that was like, for me, that was my way that I could get out of the small town where I was
Yeah.
born in Ohio. And I was like, all right, I have to find a way. So I got a lot of scholarships, worked really hard. I was looking back the other day, I was like, I had so many odd jobs that I was saving all of my money. I was working nearly full time the entire time I was in college, but I started just after I turned 16 and got double honors, like graduated
Wow.
with that, and still, again, like worked full time. But then I was able to graduate at 19. And that's when I was like, all right, I thought I was going to go into a foreign service. I was too young to take the exam. So I looked
Okay.
at all the different branches in the military. I was like, oh, this would be a really great experience. I'll do it for a few years and then transition on and do something else. And obviously, I've stayed for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
But I think like that was one of the key things is like I didn't want the life that I looked around and saw that everybody else was very content with. And I think it's great if people are content with a different lifestyle and their different choices, like that's amazing. It wasn't for me. And so I think that was one of the key things. And having to take on that much responsibility and balance so
Yeah.
many things at a young age, I think really was helpful later on that I was very independent. I think that also pushed the independence and probably being more comfortable on my own. So I think that was like the first big change in like direction towards the military, towards this lifestyle. And then the second, I was with somebody before and I thought we were gonna be together for our whole lives,
Yeah.
and he passed away. And when he
Oh,
did, it was like a very, very dark time for a long time for me. And coming out of that, having this bucket list, there, one of my best friends, she was like, you have a list that you wanted to do of all these things and places you wanted to go. Like, don't quit before you have like gone and explored and tried that. And that was really the point that I started doing like all of this massive travel, started like planning everything out. Like I had done it a little bit before. But that's when I was, yeah, maximizing every 96. Like, all right, I have this list in place. I'm going to go through all of it. And then over time, then it just, I think that was one of the key things that kind of like pull me back, reset. And again, just like keeping my list of like, all right, what are the things I want to do? Where am I happiest? Really helped turn that around. So I think those were the two main big milestones.
that's incredible. I have like goosebumps. I'm like, ooh, because I mean, it's obviously uh sad, like sad first, and and that's the thing is, nobody knows our stories like to its fullest.
Yeah.
So it's really hard, which is again why I love doing this, because there's just parts of people that you get to take like a piece of them and you're like, wow, that's inspiring. Or it's, like you took the higher road, because it's so easy to fall into a dark place. All of us have been to one or two
Mm-hmm.
in our lives, and to be able to come out of it stronger, to be able to go and do your bucket list items because that's what this person would have wanted for you anyways.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's up to you. You are the captain of your ship in life. And to look at your life one day and just be like, wow, I did all of these things. Like, you're going to have amazing stories when you're like super old in a wheelchair, still traveling or whatever.
Go with all of my scars. Every
Yeah.
year I get in some bad accident doing something. And yeah,
Oh
I'll just get
no.
a collection of scars by that point.
He's like, just point to one and I'll bring you on a journey. It's awesome. There's like a guy on TikTok who actually goes up to like all kinds of people, but a lot of them are older, and just ask who's like the one person you fell in love with, or what's the most, like, tell me about your life. And it's so interesting to me how, I mean, it's cool that this guy is doing it, but it's so interesting how just an everyday normal person sitting on a bench at a park has this incredible story that you never would have even heard. So I just love that, like, even hearing yours, because I'm like, now I feel like I know even more about you than just seeing the photos, where I'm like, why is she always somewhere? I'm like, I am so intrigued to know. I'm like, she's serving, she's over here, and it makes all the sense in the world. But you're doing that yourself. You're the captain of your own ship, and you're going to continue to be that way. So I like how you brought up the not being satisfied or content with a certain style of living, because I always find that so interesting, and it's something I think of too. So I have three sisters. All my family, they all live in New York, upstate New York, where I grew up. And I'm the only one to move away, only one to go military. similarly to you, and it was something that I felt I had a calling for. I was really intrigued by. I was very patriotic, very like, I mean, it sounds so silly when like people are like, "Why did you join?" And I think about it, I'm like, I don't know. Like my dad served for a little bit. He was enlisted a while back in the army, and I was so little at the time that I didn't really want it to be. I wanted to be a freaking dolphin trainer at that time. So I mean,
That would
like
be a dream job.
I was like, I want to like train Shamu and the dolphins, and then I thought, do I really want a giant whale coming at me? Probably not. But but for the longest time, like that's what I wanted to do. But so when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know. I just had this sense of like patriotism. The music would make me cry, the movies, the games, everything. I was just like, I really want to be a part of this. And I know that sounds like silly, but I'm like, something drew me to it. And I absolutely would never change that part of me because it's so dynamic. But I was never, when I left in 2019, I had the option of going back home, like most people do, right? And I'm like, I've been in different states now for a while. I traveled to Spain to get my foreign wings at one point. I mean, I did so many different things. You're exposed to different people, and you see life in different ways and through other people's eyes. That's what kind of led me out here to do my own thing, because I am a fiercely independent person, you can say, which is feared by some men, I would say. But because being independent is a scary. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm waiting for. I'm like, the right one will not be afraid of the independence. They'll just, demasculinize you a little bit. Because I'm like, I feel like I have a lot of masculine energy because I'm a provider and a protector. That's a whole different thing. But I was just go back, Alyssa. Like I need to ADHD brain. But the not being satisfied and being exposed to the different lifestyles that you can have, like knowing that you could be an entrepreneur or you could travel the world if you wanted to, quit your job and do something else. Like, 'cause, I mean, we're in the age of remote or, starting your own business or things like that, which is what I'm in the midst of because I'm not satisfied with certain things. And I've taken so many little steps. If I look back even 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm like, my life is drastically different. Like I'm making the small changes.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that part just really, really hit me when you were like, I could just stay home and do the same thing that everyone else is doing, work the 9 to 5 forever. I'm seeing people who don't have to do that. And to me, I'm like, that's the fire under my butt.
Yeah. And I
you
think
know?
when you see it, you're like, I could also do that. And there's so many things that, yeah, it's incredible of what people are accomplishing. And when you do see other women who have like driven and they've made their own path, like it's super inspiring. You're like, oh, I
Yeah.
love this part of what she's doing. I'm super
Mhm.
interested to learn more and figure it out. And yeah, I think if your life follows the same pattern and like plan that you had, then maybe you're not dreaming big enough and you're not
Yeah.
being flexible and like open to change. And yeah, if you're always doing that 1% of like what's making me a little happier, a little better, that's how you like find yourself a completely different direction 5 years, 10 years later.
Yeah. And they say you have to have a few passions in life, one to make you money, one to keep you
Yep.
happy, and one to keep you fit or something or healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because I have 1,000 notebooks here. I'm much the same in that way. I'm old school. Like I need to write notes. If I put it in my phone, I'm not going to reference it as much as my notebook.
Yep. I have
So,
all my lists.
yeah, like the list, the everything written. I have like calendars. I have a big whiteboard in one part of my house where I'm like, I just write down the ideas that come to me for the people I want to talk to or the things I want to accomplish. And I think it's so important to write that out. And I started that in college too, where I wrote, I was never an athlete growing up. And I've talked about that with some people before. And they're like, what? We would have thought. I'm like, no, you hand me any kind of freaking sports ball, not good at it. Just not my thing.
Yep.
But then I discovered weight training and bodybuilding, and I was like a different kind of fitness, just running or climbing, anything like that. I'm like, that's more me. But I used to have a little piece of like, 8.5 by 11, like paper, just printer paper above my bed in my college dorm of the things I wanted to accomplish just that quarter, or like, I need to get a perfect test, a perfect score on like my PT test. And then
Mhm.
the year that I was like, I want to go to airborne school, but to do that, I had to do all these other things. And I remember that one year, my first year of college, I checked off every single thing off this list because it was a visual for me to see every single day. And I was like I really did that. Like me, the person who's never won a thing in my life, never was a anybody. And that proved to me. And I think those written lists or actually writing out a goal, writing out your vision or your dream, like you said, you have to dream bigger sometimes, because if it's something that's not even a little bit scary, is it really big enough? Is it really something that you want? I don't know.
Yeah. But I love that of like putting it down and breaking it
Yeah.
into like, this is what it takes to hit this goal.
Yeah.
Do the same thing. So in that little notebook I referenced, I
Yeah.
had like, here's the 6 things I really want to accomplish this year. And then I have it broken down like per month. I have, here's like one task that has to be complete by the end of that month for
Mm-hmm.
each of those goals to be able to do it. And then I have my little weekly list of like, all right, here's what I have to do in order to keep it. But yeah, I think if you don't have a plan, then it's just like, then it's a dream. But if you have a
Yeah.
plan and you have steps that you're taking and you're actively like, again, just like one small step, then it's a goal and you're actually like moving toward it. I think I changed that a couple of years ago for New Year's resolutions. I was like, all right, if you make the same resolution every year and you're not
Mm-hmm.
making any progress towards it, like what can you change? And for me, it was again just like breaking it down, like having here's my goal for each month. And yeah, I think seeing it visually, you're like, all right, yes, I can do these things, like knock this out. But it's definitely helpful when you can see progress being made towards it as well, I think.
Absolutely. I love that you do that too. Because and I think it's important for other listeners because it's easy to write down a goal. It's
Yeah.
easy to visual like I know there's a lot more out there now that helps with, there's different programs or even 75 hard that helps you just build better habits for your life. Working out, eating right, sticking to something. There's got to be steps to take because writing down a goal, super easy. I want to make $1 million or I want to live in this other place. I want to drive this car, whatever your goal is. Some people have the materialistic goals, which is great. Good on you. For me, mine's more experience because as I've gotten older and have a kid and I've humbled myself, and having come from nothing as well, it's like
Mhm.
you start to value different things. Like, what is the quality of my life? What is the quality of how I view myself? Um, and in the things that I do. If I'm preaching, but like talking to people about like live your best life, exceed your potential, then why would I want to do anything other than live an above mediocre life? You know what I mean? I want to continue to excel and do different things because I can't tell other people to do that. And then I'm like, I'm not going to do it though. Like that's too hard. It's too difficult to set goals and actually like check things off. Like, and I have this new notebook too that a friend had sent me. It's called the Finisher Journal.
Hmm.
And so that one you actually write down very specific goals. And again, kind of what you're doing. It's basically what you do. It's just it
Mhm.
prompts it for you with like tips for it, the 3 major tasks to complete the overall goal, but don't have more than one large goal because you're gonna, your brain's not gonna be able to,
Grounded it. Yeah.
yeah, you're not gonna be able to do it all, or maybe you can. It depends on how big it is. But I think it's so interesting to see how different people navigate their dream life because I know visualization is a huge one where they say just visualize the life that you want to have. And sometimes I'm like looking at a blank slate when I close my I'm like, what is it that, there's a point when I was like, what is it that I actually want? What do
Mhm.
you want to do, Alyssa? And I'm sure you've probably faced that too, where you actually had to sit and think with yourself, like, how am I working towards something if I don't actually know what the vision is?
Yeah. And I think especially transitioning out of the military, you kind of
Mm,
face those questions a little bit more because when you're in, you're like, all right, there's clear goals. It's very well defined of what you need to do in
yep.
order to be promoted, to be successful on your
Mm-hmm.
performance evaluations. But when you're out, you have so much more flexibility, which is great in terms of being able to like actually choose your own adventure. But then it is
Yeah.
a lot more on you to be able to like plan things out and to figure out what that looks like. When you're talking Atomic Habits, have you ever read that? It's by James
Yes.
Clear. Love that book. Like I always start
Yes.
my year, I just listen. It's an audio. I listen to it as an audio book.
Yep.
It's super quick, easy. But I think he does brings up so many great points of like how to break it down in structure. So
Mm-hmm.
of what you're saying of like time and place, it sounds like the journal is kind of helpful in actually like writing that out for yourself. But I think that's one of the best things of just like thinking through, all right, how can you incorporate it into your life of what you're doing? And then again, I love how he focuses on like the 1%, like what can you do that's going to
Mm-hmm.
make you just like a little bit better. And then if you keep doing that over the course of the year, couple years, like the compound is going to build up and you're going to see the big improvements that you were hoping for.
No, absolutely. I love that you brought that up too. That's a great book. And I do research all the time on what are the books that people are reading now that because I love to read, but I only read nonfiction self-help things
Okay.
these days because I'm like, I don't have time to I'll watch a movie if I want some fiction stuff in my life. But as far as the books, Atomic Habits is a good one. I started reading the 5 a.m. Club.
Okay.
Which being in the military, we're used to like waking up early. But as I've exited, I've noticed I'm like, okay, like now 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I'm like, because I work really early too. My job is 7:30 to 5. So sometimes if you're not looking forward to going to that, it's not as easy to wake yourself up. So like reading these different books that help you like reset your mind and get into those habits, because we sleep 1/3 of our life, they say,
Mm-hmm.
which is scary. That's
Yep.
like that's a lot of time to reset. But could you share with us any personal transformation you've had on one of your travels or experiences, like something where a part of you changed?
Yeah. So I think, like I said, right after
Mhm.
my the person that I really cared for passed away, I went on it was like a month. I had saved up a bunch of leave. I came back from a deployment and then went on this big trip. And it was kind of the start of all of the travel.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think at the end of that, so there was one sunset. I was in Burma and they have Old Bagan. There's these beautiful temples that are scattered all throughout,
Wow.
just an open space, almost no one there. And at the time, I don't know if you can still do this, but at the time you were allowed to like climb up and sit on the top of the temple. So I
Oh,
did
wow.
that and like was sitting up there watching the sunset. And it was like the first time that I felt hope again of there
Wow.
is something still that I enjoy in this life. There's more good things that will come. But it definitely took months of like all the negative patterns, all the bad habits, and just spiraling. But I think again, just like going back to finding something of making the decision, the one decision that's going to like change the direction. And I think it was for me that was one of the moments that has like stuck with me of like sitting up there and then
Yeah.
for the first time in a long time that I saw something I wanted to continue. Like there was more that was going to be good, and sometimes it's just hard to hold out for that moment of the reset. But I think there's always that one.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And I mean, that's inspiring too, that, you see the good and you're putting good out there as well. And I think it comes back tenfold when you're putting good out in the world with like zero expectation of it. Like, I need to be paid back for this, or I need to whatever. It's going to come back to you, regardless. And that's something that's hard in the day of a very, I hate to say this about our society, but it's very selfishly driven, especially with social media. It's very like self media. We all want to highlight ourselves and like this and that, and I'm so great. But it's, and I hate to, you know, beat the dead horse when I'm like, that's what this platform is for. Is like, no, because it's not a me show. I'm like, I love showcasing these amazing women, and some guys that I'll have on here too, because perspective matters. But
Mhm.
I think it's so unique, the experiences that we all have, what we come from, how many similar things we come from, and to see the different outcomes of how we've lived our lives or how we are continuing to live our lives. Because it's never too late to have that inspiring moment, to have, to get out of a deep rut. And your story is going to help a handful of people, if not more. And that's what's so powerful, is that you can still see the good in the world. Even when bad things happen, it doesn't mean your whole life is horrible.
Yeah, uh, I agree because I think hearing it from
Yeah.
other people of when you look at someone, you're like, I would love to be in that place and doing the things you're doing, and then you hear that it wasn't all roses for them either, and that there were a lot
Yeah.
of things that they have, and they still have to. Like everyone still has the
Yeah.
challenges that they have to overcome. Yeah, I think it's encouraging when you're like, all right, we can, encouraging
Yeah.
other people to move forward and to hopefully like spark some inspiration of like trying one thing or
Yeah.
starting on a project. I think is always helpful.
Yeah. And I think that's a big message that your story tells, is to just try, just do.
Yeah.
Don't just say, just do it. Just write it down, do it.
Plan it, like try it.
Yeah, because I think some of us kill ourselves with over planning,
Yep.
or not, not planning at all. It could be the polar opposite, but it's we're, oh well, I'm not financially ready yet. I'm not this yet. I'm not that. I'm like, sometimes you have to just go out and do something if you're able to. Like if it's something that you can already do, just do it. Just like the podcast. I'm like, oh well, I can wait forever, another year to like be like prepared for it, you
Yeah.
know?
Don't wait till you're ready. Try
Don't
it where you feel ready.
Yeah.
I think
Because
especially for women, I think that was one of the points in Lean In that I loved of
yeah.
like start applying because women so often are like, I'm not ready, like I don't have quite enough
Yeah.
experience. And I think just like trying it often you find out that you were more prepared and you were fine at doing those things. Again, like going back to the marathon and starting the mountain climbs for me, I did Kilimanjaro as my first mountain. Didn't really do any training. Was like, oh, like I'll go see if it works out. Went and tried it, and then absolutely loved doing mountain climbing and have gotten into that. But it was trying it well before I was ready. Hadn't again like done training, and so I think there are those things again. Like if you're able to do it, try it.
Yeah, because life is too short. We can spend most of it waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a horrible way to be. It's just like in purgatory by yourself. Like you put yourself there to wait. And I think that's a really important message that you're sending, just to do it. Just have the goal, especially if you're a little afraid of it. That's a good thing. They say what you want lies on the other side of fear. And I think that's an exciting way to live. I mean, to just try it, because at the end of the day, like when you're super old, I don't want to, at least when I am, I don't want to have a bunch of regrets of like, oh, I wish I did this. I wanted to do that. Now I'm too old to actually physically do some of the things I really wanted to do. I'm not going to be jumping out of a plane at 90 years old, probably.
Maybe.
Maybe, you never know.
You do it, you love it.
And this is how it ended. No, I'm just kidding.
Someday is a very dangerous word.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, there's so many things that you can put off and look back and regret not trying things, not doing things. Yeah, I think it's one of the most dangerous words that you end up wasting and not trying so many things.
Yeah. So what would you say to people then that maybe they know the things they want to try, but they're just not spontaneous? I don't think you have to be super spontaneous, but how would you encourage someone to live the life of their dreams or to try that one new thing if they just don't have that bone in their body to like do it, and they don't have the support system? Because usually it's the support system is lacking.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the benefits. So we've talked about some of the downsides of social media, but I think that's one of the is that it's this amazing platform. Like that's how we were able to.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are out there doing the things that you're interested in. People drop me notes on there all the time of like, hey, how did you do this? Like, was this safe? They ask a bunch of questions. I think reach out to somebody, because then you end up building friendships, you end up meeting people. And if they're the type of person that you want to become, or you want to like imitate some part of their life that you are really interested in going, and yeah, maybe you don't have friends who are interested in doing the same types of things, but I think like reaching out, trying to find community of for a lot of people, if they're not in great shape, going to the gym could seem intimidating. And so I think like maybe joining a club of other people, or like a CrossFit group, you know, there's so many different things, but if you're surrounded by people who are already doing it, it seems so much more attainable, and they can give you like, here's little tips, here's advice, here's what worked for me. And again, like when you see others around you who are successfully doing the thing that you want to do, I think that's really great encouragement.
Yeah. And you hit it when you said community. I think that matters so much, because if you don't have the most supportive family, or you don't have a spouse or significant other, maybe you just said like, I'm a single mom, but dang, I don't have, you know, family out here or anything like that for support. And I don't think they don't truly grasp what I do on social media yet. They're still kind of like, that's weird. Like I'm the only one with like tattoos and does social media like the way I do. And so it's like, yeah, that support system really matters, but finding communities of people, building this female community. Cause I'm like, I really need like more women, like strong women in my corner or in my life, to build that amongst ourselves. Cause I've already referred like some girls who've been on here to each other, like other people that I've met that I'm like, you guys would be like, could do great things. Or, you know, one that was a boxer, got her linked up with Hayabusa, a boxing company. So, I mean, like, it's all about community. And and I think that really does matter, especially pushing out your comfort zone, which the military, like I said, helped me with that, because I met people from all walks of life that had little to everything. And I mean, it teaches you so much about the potential of your own life. So yeah, I don't think you need to be spontaneous, but I like how you said community, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. There's resources out there. It's just we don't always know about them.
Yes. And again, like finding other people who are doing it, they know those resources and they can point you in the right direction. And then you at least have like a starting point.
Yeah. And the social media thing is a beautiful place. Like I've met so many amazing people like yourself that I'm like, I never would have known you from Adam, never would have crossed paths. Maybe like, I mean, who knows? We could have at some point and never knew. But it's so interesting because whenever we start following, it's probably from some cross-military something, because that seems to be the common communities that, you know, will either blast us out or connect to you. But I'm glad that we did connect, and you have a very inspiring story. I really appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to post it because people are going to be super excited about hearing from you and hearing the other side of it, because like you said, nothing's rainbows and sunshine, but how you're living your life is so amazing and so incredible, and you're doing it for you. But I mean, I don't know. I really like your story, and I like that I got to hear more about it. Finally.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been super fun, and I love what you're doing. This is amazing, of exactly what we were just talking about, a community of doing that and getting information from other people of what they're doing. I think is always helpful to see those inspiring people in all different dynamics and all different walks of life, and chasing different dreams is pretty incredible.
It is, and it's everyone's potential is absolutely limitless. You're the only one who could put limits on your potential. So I think I love that. And I love that everything you said was so powerful. And now I'm like, okay, I gotta go make my bucket list now, because who knows? Who knows when it ends? I don't know. So I gotta live life to the fullest every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, let everyone know where they can follow you at, so that, you know, when they hop off of the channel, they can follow you and see what you're up to.
Yeah, so my Instagram and blog are both under the same name, The Bree Adventure. A name I created years ago, and it's just kind of stuck that I was like, oh, the adventure's all over. But yeah, happy to connect with anybody.
Absolutely. And thank you again. You have a very inspiring story, like I said, and I could continue to say that, but you're going to continue to do amazing things. I can't wait to see where you go next. Well, it is South Africa, you said, so I can't wait to see what you do out there.
Hopefully cage diving with great whites. This has been on my list for so long that I saw it and I was like, oh, I want to do this. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that we'll see some great white sharks on the dive trip, and that all goes well.
You better bring your aqua camera or something, because I want footage.
Yeah, I have to remember to pack the GoPro.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Bree. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.
Absolutely. And everyone listening, thanks for hopping on, supporting. The best way to support us is to share, comment, leave a review. And there's other ways too. Just visit my website, but stay adaptable, stay reckless.